The 24th of September rather, marks Heritage Day in South Africa, a day set aside to celebrate the rich cultural tapestry and history that defines our nation. From traditional clothing and music to food, dance and ceremony, it's a reminder of the diversity that gives meaning to the term Rainbow Nation. But central to all of this is language, a carrier of history, identity, story and culture. South Africa is home to 12 official languages, with sign language being a 13th official language, each with its own legacy, stories and expressions that have shaped who we are. To unpack the role of language in preserving our heritage, we're joined by Professor Lolie Makhubu-Badenhorst, Chairperson of the Pan-South African Language Board, PanSALB. But first, let's have a listen at this.
Siyalotshisa emakhaya ngamakhaya nanzi zesindebele zika 5:30 ngoCedric Mwebya sizikhatsha kweSABC 1 akwande
baka hina intsako khela ihlangane ka mahungu ya Xitsonga ka SABC 2 ni la ka channel ya mahungu ya le high eka DTT riperile
ana musiri ya gazane pa gombala bajauli ya tebra na mucho madeko na budi ndewe
Kansge mbogeli tingako lebe sikuphathele tona
Waarvoor ons tyd het vanaand 'n lekker aand verder totsiens
Tuka gore le gotswa ka magoro ga se go latlhana re kopane mo nakong e tlang a nne boroko.
Mogedi wa SABC ke lebogile nako ya lena go tswa go nna setlogolo sa ganya go kere ga ebe boroko.
Sibeka lapho ke simo sezulu namhlanje kusihlwa mina ke nyinto ngamadlamini olangelihle ngoba libalele ngithe konke kufeziwe kamnandi mawethu.
And of course, that is the offering here of the SABC, making sure that all South Africans are able to access information and important news. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Language in South Africa is not itself uncontroversial or incontroversial rather. It's a controversial part of our history and our contemporary realities. For instance, some languages that are a part of the South African history just don't reflect in our official languages. And these are some of the languages that the Pan-South African Language Board is hoping to resuscitate and preserve, such as, for instance, the languages of the Griqua, the Khoi, the San, the Amahlubi, for instance, distinguishing between Ndebele and Mandebele, for instance. And there's a contestation not of dialect but of language holistically that I think speaks a great deal to our history. Talk us through why moments like Heritage Day is an important opportunity for us to have those really often painful conversations once again.
Well, thanks, dear Lord Chanya Bulisa, and thanks for that. You know, our languages are our heritage. And you know, there are people that are always negative when you talk about our languages. And I think we need to give credit where credit is due. As a country, we have evolved. And, you know, in the past, there are gone the days where we used to only listen to English and Afrikaans. You know, as we speak now, I mean, SABC has got, you know, in various channels, we use our languages. And if we don't use them, unfortunately, then they will die. So it is important for us then to keep our languages alive because language is our heritage. And we need to remind people, especially during this Heritage Month, if we don't remind the young ones, the current generation, the future generations will not be able to benefit. And as you rightfully say that as the Pan-South African Language Board, what we are doing, we are working together with the Khoi and the San people and also working with the higher institutions, the institutions of higher learning like the universities, because that is where we need to educate our youth. So for instance, at the University of Cape Town, where I am based, we then launched a dictionary to preserve one of the endangered language, that is the Ngqu language. We work with Dr. Oma Katrina, and I say doctor because as the University of Cape Town, we did confer an honorary degree doctorate to her because she is the only living legend of that particular one, of that particular language, that is the Ngqu language. And then lastly, our South African Sign Language, as you would recall, we celebrated and we were really ululating in 2023 in July when we were at the Union Building with the President as the Pan-South African Language Board, when the South African Sign Language was made and one of the official languages in the country. So we want to embrace all our languages equally.
Yeah, let's talk about the controversy of the forgotten languages. That is to say, the languages that got lost in the margins of migration, whether urban, rural migration, and or the intertwining of different tribes and or cultures in South Africa. The Makhubu, for instance, very interesting and important history. And oftentimes the languages, and I say languages because there's multiple of them, of the Makhubu tribe, just aren't reflected in our conversations around language. How do we revive those conversations in a way that respects our history?
Okay, now speaking as an academic, how we revive them is that you need to understand that each and every language has got various dialects, like isiXhosa, isiZulu, and so on, would have the various dialects. You know, for instance, then you're speaking about Makhubu. isiXhosa is an umbrella term. It's got its own language varieties and dialects. So you'll have isiMpondomise, isiHlubi, isiPaca, and so on and so on. So those languages, we use them in our respective communities, and these languages are kept alive, whether through museum, whether through our culture, when we celebrate our culture, when we use it at home, we do not dictate to people to only use isiXhosa at home. AmaPaca athetha isiPaca, isiPaca. AmaHlubi athetha isiHlubi. AmaMpondomise athetha isiMpondomise. And it is the same like all the languages in the world. So we need to make that distinction. So, but we as a nation need to ensure that in our different spaces, in as much as in schools, the standardized version is isiXhosa. It doesn't mean that we don't embrace other languages. Other languages are still very much alive. And this is not a particular case with only isiXhosa and isiHlubi. So we revive them by making sure that the current generations, Ogogo, Omkhulu, and everybody else are using these languages so that they do not die. And then we preserve them as a country. And then lastly, we as the Pan-South African Language Board, we support and we work with people who are using technology.
Yeah.
We know that our youth, without
just
technology,
to interject there, Prof. Isn't that exactly the controversy that some are saying, no, we're not a dialect of this language. We're a language in and of ourselves. For instance, the distinction of Mandebele, who are of a Hlubi lineage, are saying Mandebele and Isindebele are not the same language. They're entirely different languages. And it seems to be the claim that they are dialects of each other. And they argue that it's certainly not. They ask for official recognition of their language as a language in and of itself, because that gives it the ability to self-determine, but it gives it legal status to be reflected in education, to be reflected in how they convene themselves in official spaces. I want you to speak to me about that distinction.
Well, there is a distinction between, maybe let me take a step back. There is a distinction between a language variety and a dialect. You know, there's the fine line between that and a standardized language. So, say for instance, all of the, like for the Sepedi, the Northern Sotho, and by the Kilobedu and so on. We have this debate. So as a country, we are having these scholarly debates. And as the Pan-South African Language Board, we have listened to everybody. And sometimes the people themselves, you know, when we include the scholarly debate and we go to various communities, in some instances, these languages are a variety of that. However, they are mutually intelligible, and we want to embrace them. So when the time is right, we will then increase our languages. Once we have the spelling and orthography rules and everything of all these languages, then we will expand. We talk about additive bilingualism, meaning that multilingualism. We do not want to exclude anybody. However, if we do not have any standardized versions of a particular language, it is, as an academic, we cannot then say that, you know, that language exists. And say, for instance, I want to go and teach, for instance, wake up tomorrow and say that I want to teach isiPaca or isiHlubi and so on. There are no teaching and learning material to use that. So we say that let's have a conversation. Let's develop the material. And we as PanSALB, we want to support communities and everybody to say that let's be level of the other
Yeah,
languages.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. That is Prof. Lolie Makhubu-Badenhorst from the Pan-South African Language Board talking to us there about the role of languages during our commemoration and celebration of Heritage Day in South Africa, the 27th of September.